Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hello everyone and a very warm welcome to yet another session of Quest, wherein we interview people from different walks of life on their spiritual journey. Let me begin with a small prayer. Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Shri Dakshina Murtaye Namaha. सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्. Today we have a special guest, Shri Ram Kumar Seshu ji, who is joining us from Bangalore. He is an author and founder of Born to Win Learning Services. He has 40 years of corporate experience, and he has spent 22 as an ad man and the last 18 years as the mindset change specialist. He has worked in many brands such as Amul, Dr. Reddy's Labs, Glaxo Complan, etc. And he has also been involved in 2 successful startups and 3 turnaround companies at very senior positions. After extensive research on issues that hold people back from utilizing their full potential, he, along with his senior team, wrote Born to Win process in 2003. And then as a trainer and a mentor, he has trained more than 1 lakh people have experienced positive change after undergoing the Born to Win process with his organization. He has a very good corporate record, but he has another side, which is the spiritual journey, which is his journey into Bhagavad Gita and Vedanta. And so we will be talking about this today. A very warm welcome to you, sir, and thank you for agreeing to be on our show.
Namaskara. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
So let me start with our leading question about your life, your background, education, and your early influences, especially influences of perhaps a cultural, religious, or spiritual character.
Well, I spent, I did my schooling from Hyderabad, and then of course moved on to Bombay and finished my graduation, post-graduation from Mumbai and started working in Bombay. My early influence in life is my father. My grandmother, my mother, because these are the 3 people who really influenced me and shaped me. My father was a Sanskrit scholar, and he was a great ritualist. So he kind of initiated me into understanding the nuances of what works and what doesn't work. And in many ways, he's my first guru in life. And it is he who kind of set me on this path of trying to understand the Atman, the Parabrahman. And that really is what set it off. So it was at a very young age, really. And then I, thanks to him and his own deep interest, abiding interest in Indic thought processes, in the Hindu Sanatana Dharma, he was a voracious reader. So whenever he'd get a new book, he would insist that I understand. I try and read that, understand some of it, figure out what is happening in that particular treatise. And along the way, I happened to meet with very many different learned people, one of whom was Swami Chinmayananda, who at a very young age used to take, in those days, I'm talking of the Hyderabad of the 70s.
Oh.
He used to, he used to come and he used to regularly have the Gita Jnana Yajna. And on Sundays, he would meet up with young people like us, 9-year-old, 10-year-old, try and tell us stories about, so many different stories about the Gita. I guess somewhere all of this got together and shaped my thinking.
So, can you, I mean, how did your meeting with Swami Chinmayananda happened? And can you tell us more about that interaction and how that has influenced your life over the years?
You can imagine, as a 9 or 10-year-old young boy in Hyderabad, Sundays used to be very precious, because that was the day when you were at home, and mom invariably used to cook up some very interesting stuff, because I was in a school, Hyderabad public school, and so Sundays were very special days. Okay. And one Sunday, my father bundled me into the car and said, you've got to come and spend time with me. And I still remember that on that day, he, I was taken into the presence of Swamiji. And we were about 8 or 10 or 12 young people there, young girls and boys. And Swamiji, I remember asking us a question saying that, how many of you were forced to be here? And I was the only guy who put up my hand and said, much to the consternation of my father, who was very upset, saying that, why did I have to lift my hand? And all the other kids, I'm sure, wanted to, but, they didn't, or whatever. And I still remember Swamiji calling me and giving me a banana and saying, sit next to me. I like your honesty. And I think somewhere, in that, there was a very valuable lesson that he shared, saying that, look, you must always speak your mind. Never have something in your mind and never do something else. You always speak that. And some of those early lessons kind of just stuck. And when you're young and when you get these interesting lessons and thoughts, it kind of completely influences your life. So one started enjoying that whole process of, on a Sunday morning, going and spending time with Swamiji and listening to his stories. And every story had a small little nugget here and a nugget there. Very interesting stuff.
Wonderful. So, what made you explore success and leadership? I mean, you have been doing teaching workshops on leadership and these related things. So, what made you take up this field, this journey in your life?
I was, I hate to say this, and I hope it doesn't sound very pompous, but I was one of those, high achievers in life. So I kind of worked very hard, and with the blessings of my parents and the gurus, I developed, very interesting ways and means of looking at, when people would see normal stuff, I would be able to go beyond that. So success came relatively early for me in life. I started assuming positions of leadership very early, when my first position of leadership when I was all of 24. And when I was 26, I was promoted. I was heading a huge department, which had people who had work experience more than my age. And then I was promoted and I was sent to Hyderabad. And so life was, I was literally on that fast track of life, achieving a lot, getting whatever I wanted in life, working hard to it and getting there. And then what happened was that I moved back to Bombay. And suddenly my whole world came crumbling down, because the success that I'd got used to achieving, the results that I got used to achieving, were no longer mine. And I went through a huge period of indecision, and I went through a lot of self-doubt. And when you're thrown from being somebody to becoming a nobody in life, it's a great wake-up call that I got way back in 95.
Was it because of the change in the work environment or something else?
It completely changed in the work environment, and I'd moved from one city to another city, and everything kind of just kept crumbling around me. Nothing was the same anymore. Whatever efforts that I took were not giving me the kind of results that I wanted. And that is the time when I still remember, and I'm so grateful because my father had come to Bombay, and he saw me struggling at that time. And he said, then he quietly went into the home library, and he pulled out this book of the Bhagavad Gita that he'd given me years ago, which I had just kind of set aside. And he said, "Why don't you read this?" And I could never say no to him, because I said, he was a guru of mine, and and surprisingly, it was Swami Chinmayananda's Bhagavad Gita. Yeah, sure. I mean, let me start reading it again. And I just started flipping through the pages, and suddenly found so many answers to the questions that were there in my mind. This whole self-doubt, this, should I do this? But I haven't got the result that I want. Things are not working for me. And somewhere I started getting all the answers that I was looking for. And that really, really reinforced my entire, thought, my belief that yes, there is this one treatise holds all the answers to all the questions that I had in my mind. And that really kind of, helped me change my mindset completely. Okay. So I'm a product of that, you go through this intense high, and then you hit that low. And then you need to go through a process by which you can, recalibrate your mind and come out of it. Mm-hmm. That is what Krishna does to Arjuna in the entire Bhagavad Gita. And that is what really, really set me going. So after doing that for about 6 or 7 years, and reclaiming my ego self, which is that I'm very successful and I'm doing very well in Mumbai, and having started a healthcare company which went and did extremely, extremely well in Bombay. That was the time I realized, I said, look, I think enough is enough. Let me now dedicate the rest of my life to helping people succeed. Till then I was building great brands. Now I said, I think we need to start building people and figuring out how we can. So that is how this whole business of leadership and the journey of leadership, success, understanding those nuances, that really started at that time.
So when you were engaging with Bhagavad Gita under the instruction of your father, you said almost for 6 years you engaged with Gita, and it has tremendous influence on your life. So tell us about how you approach the text. You mentioned about Swami Chinmayananda's translation and commentary. So were you reading Bhagavad Gita from cover to cover, or were you picking a bits here and a bits there and reflecting upon it? And what kind of how did it help you in your career, in setting, in changing your mindset and providing a different perspective?
Well, I must tell you, I do two things. One is that I take it up to myself that in 18 days I complete 18 chapters, 1 chapter a day, and I read that. Even now I do that. And there are times when I need to spend a little time, when I need some more answers, or somebody's asked me a question or an answer. For instance, even when you and Hari reached out to me and said, would you like to do this session? The instant thought in my mind is that, okay, what do I need to communicate? And surprisingly, when I opened the Bhagavad Gita that day, I went to chapter 18, and right at the end, when he says, the kind of people that you must talk about, the learnings and stuff like that. So after that, it's become now a way of life. So, whenever I need any input in life, in addition to the morning reading that happens, it's just casually you flip the book open, pick a page, and you've got some interesting insight that Krishna is providing, and suddenly everything kind of falls into place, and you say, hey, yeah, this is it.
Have you consulted any other versions of Bhagavad Gita? With other commentary? tradition?
I regularly pursue about 7 or 8 different versions. One of my favorites is Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan's Bhagavad Gita. Swami Vivekananda's commentary on the Bhagavad Gita is another fantastic commentary that I read. And then there are so many other versions over the years that I've been reading. My father used to read a particular book, and I read that. So I now read about 7 or 8 different. So I'm not attached to a particular commentator. I just pick up whatever is available in front of me at that point of time. And I think that's the beauty of it all, because you see, everybody has his own or her own interpretation of the same shloka. And for a couple of months, I used to read one shloka, and I used to read all the 7 or 8 different commentators on that shloka, to kind of understand a little more about what the different
Did
thoughts.
you also consult traditional commentaries like that of Shankaracharya and others?
Very much, of course. That is the original, right? That is from where all the thought emerges. So, of course.
Moving on, I want to ask you about your organization that you have now set up, Born to Win. So, how did you conceive this organization, and what are its goals, and how your own engagement with Bhagavad Gita and Vedanta has helped you in running the organization and conceiving the goals of the organization?
Well, I did tell you that I used to be in Bombay, and I was running a very large, successful advertising communications group there. And I realized something very interesting, that, end of the millennium, the last millennium, 99, 2000, India had really opened up as a market. Companies were doing extremely well. People were accessing the stock markets. Everything had changed. Capital was easily available. Foreign brands were coming into this country. Indian brands were collaborating with foreign brands. So there were a lot of changes that were happening in India at that time. And we were on the cusp of, really taking over the whole world. But I realized at that time that a number of clients of mine, the people who were working in those organizations, were all struggling. And I realized then that one of the reasons why they're struggling is because of the fact that they are still operating with very old mindsets. And the mindsets that they're operating with are mindsets that they kind of firmed up during the scarcity regime. And we were hurtling towards the abundance regime. And in this whole process of, a mindset stuck in the scarcity regime with an opportunity available in the abundance regime, there is a huge gap between the two, right? And that is when, I realized that what is it that will hold people back? What is it that will hold companies back? And we did a lot of research for almost about 2 or 3 years. I went around the country because by that time I knew that I wanted to do something in this specific area. So I went around the country, and we looked. I met lots and lots and lots of people, different organizations, different companies, and I found out that there are 3 very serious challenges that people seem to be having. Now, from our own Indic thinking process, this is what we call the conditioning of our minds, these mindsets. And if we don't address this particular conditioning, then we will never be in a position to capture those opportunities that are available and eventually do what we want to do in life. So this is one research. But thanks to my, trying to study the Gita and being a student of the Gita, and I continue to be one right now, what happened really is that, and this is how the answers keep coming to you, that initially when, if you look at the, if you transpose this to what happened in the war, you had the finest warrior of his time, Arjuna. I mean, if you look at it from an equipment perspective, or if you look at it from a training perspective, if you look at it from a skill perspective, there was nobody there who could even hold a candle to Arjuna in the war. I mean, the best of equipment, I mean, from a modern perspective, you can look at it as sending somebody into the battlefield, which is the market. And he had the best of the best. But then Krishna, I think, understood and knew one thing, that in the heat of the war, if he ever would come up against a Bhishma or a Drona or, one of the people that he revered, maybe he would falter. Maybe he won't have the confidence at that time. Maybe he won't be able to focus on the priority of what he's supposed to be doing right now. And again, this is because of his conditioning, that he has been taught all his life to defer to his elders. And hence, I think, the master planner that he was, Krishna brings Arjuna right into the middle and says, okay, take a look. Look at who's arranged against you. And true to form, he says, I'm not going to fight. And this conditioning challenge is really, really what hits every one of us in the corporate world. That at the right time, despite the best of preparation, despite the best of whatever we do, we're not able to go and put our best foot forward in life. And when you're not able to go and put your best foot forward in life, obviously you're not going to get the result that you want. And that causes a deep amount of unhappiness within you. So we merged all these different thoughts. And we said, can we dip into our own thought process? Because at that point of time, if you remember in 2000, there were lots and lots and lots of programs that had come from across the world. And the corporate world was doing a lot of those kinds of programs. But we didn't have a serious Indic thought process, an Indian thought process that we could convert into a modern management tool and take it to the world. Okay? We didn't have that at all at that time. And that is what we sat and we did in Born to Win. Me and my team perfected that. We got it going. It took us some time, I must say that it wasn't as, today when I look back, it says, okay, when you've been there for 18 years, what is 2 years? 2 years is nothing when you compare it to those 18 years. But those 2 years were very intense, a lot of research, a lot of, getting things going. We needed to get our own way of doing things, we talk about it. And I think we've been we've been moderately successful, I must say. Yes, we've done about 100,000 people. We've deployed the program in about 31 cities. And everywhere, I think, at the end of the program, one great thing that we keep hearing again and again is this: I think I knew this before. And I said, yes, of course you knew it, because, if you'd spent time with your grandmother, or if you'd spent time, with some elder at home, you would have 100% heard of this, what you need to do.
Can you tell us more about these programs you do, especially what kind of Indic elements have you included in these programs? What
Sure.
lessons from Gita? Do they go through a short capsule study of Gita, or is it more of a practical program?
It's more of a practical program. You see, there are 4 aspects to any human being, and this is really that comes from our own thought process. The first is the way you manage yourself. The way you think about yourself, the way you talk to yourself, the way you sit down and do what you need to be doing. The second is the way you manage the work that you're assigned. The third is the way you manage people that are working with you. And fourth is the way you manage the ecosystem. These are the 4 elements that you need to get into alignment in case you want to achieve anything, in case you want to grow your business or whatever it is that you want to do. And while doing all of this, you must make sure that you create happiness for yourself and everybody around you. Now, if you see this whole concept of happiness, this is eternally us, right? In the sense that our whole quest is happiness, is ananda, is bliss. Okay, we're only looking for that in life, and how do we create that in whatever we're doing? And one of the first things that we teach in this whole, managing self is the power of thinking that I can do it. That I am the Brahman. I am somebody who can go and achieve whatever I set my mind to go and do. And that's the first thing that we start with. Now, it is not enough to tell you that you have the power, but then we must show you a way of how to achieve that. And that is something that we spend a lot of time on. Saying, how are you going to actually start thinking that I have the power? I have the Brahman within me who can go and achieve whatever he or she wants to achieve. So that's the first part. The second part is the way you manage your work. That whatever that you want to do in life, there is a way of accomplishing that particular work that you need to plan that out. And again, we go back into our own thinking, our own thought process, saying, how are you going to make sure that you prioritize what needs to be done? Then the third is about the whole business of managing self, managing people. Now, when we are going to manage people, the Western thought process is very simple, okay? That people are completely dispensable. That you don't have to worry. You can hire, you can fire, you can do anything that you want, and just get that work going. The Western thought process is very simple. It's based on reward and recognition. That either I give you a carrot, which is a reward for you to do what you want to do, or I give you a stick, which means I threaten you into doing what I want you to do. Now, what we do in the Born to Win process is very simple. We say, look, you've got to respect that there is a person like you in the other person. So it starts with a deep amount of respect for the other person. You must respect the other person. So it's very important to understand that like you are you, there is another person who's him or her. And therefore, we bring again this thought process into how are you going to manage people, right? The way you relate to people, the way you listen to people. So we give a lot of importance to listening. For instance, our own thinking, our own thought process is a lot to do with listening. And then the whole issue of managing the ecosystem. There will be obstacles that will come your way. How are you going to overcome those obstacles? Again, we go back into dipping into what we are saying, that look at two very, very important issues. If you recall in chapter 16 of the Gita, when Krishna tells Arjuna about the so many different, almost 31 odd characteristics of a person. He starts with Abhayam and he ends with Natimanita, which is, fearlessness and humility. So we say, when you want to tackle any obstacles that come, you must be fearless in what you do. You must have no fear. There's no place for fear. So you can take your decisions with a lot of confidence. Go ahead. So we package this whole thing into the program. But what we've also done very interestingly is that we have managed to, we've managed to curate a way of explaining this knowledge. So what we do is that it is a lot of self-realization that happens. And again, that is something that we borrowed very, very heavily. We lean very, very heavily on our own thought process to achieve that.
That's a very insightful response. Today in the corporate, especially in the corporate world, but even otherwise, leadership is given a huge value. Everywhere. I mean, today we have universities dedicated to public leadership. For example, we have Rashtram University, which has started to focus on public leadership. We have so many different kind of leadership, especially in corporate sector. The leadership is a big issue. So, in your such a long experience, and engagement with Bhagavad Gita specifically, but also perhaps other texts from Vedanta that you might have studied and engaged with. Uh, what are some of the significant lessons apart from what we have been discussing for the last 30 minutes? What are some of the significant lessons in leadership? I think the as you mentioned earlier, that the very setting, the context of Bhagavad Gita teaching itself is very insightful. I mean, it is set in the midst of a war before the war begins, and wherein they are placed in the very center of the battle. Something like we can take it as a metaphor of the battle in life, wherein we have to make a decision to go to choose A or to choose B. And in a corporate context, that could be a very dynamic decision, a fast making decision, right? So in these contexts, I have found that it is not easy to become leaders. I mean, those who are very good leaders, they are often born with the tendency to leadership, to decision making. Though it is possible to learn these skills, it is not very easy. So I want you to shed some light on how Gita is helpful. Any particular lessons from Gita or any particular shlokas that strike you as most relevant to the issue of leadership?
See, first and foremost, I think, very clearly, right in chapter 2 itself, Krishna talks about one very important point. He says that, look, it is better for you. I think it is Shloka 63, if I'm not wrong, when he says, it is better for you to be yourself. Don't be somebody else in life. Okay? However deficient that particular course may be, it doesn't matter. But you please be yourself first and foremost. Now, this leads us to a great requirement to be authentic leaders. When you say that, look, leadership, you can't learn, or, you're saying that you may be born with it. No, you're not born with anything. Let me tell you one thing. Okay? You are born with some amazing winning traits. But then you need to keep making sure that you hone that. One of the most important traits for a leader today is to be authentic. The reason why, especially in the public leadership space, we are losing faith on our leaders is because of this. We are not authentic anymore, period. It's as simple and straight as that. Authenticity has completely gone out of the window. And this is exactly what Sri Krishna talks about there, saying that, look, you be yourself. Don't try and be somebody else. That is not at all required. Okay, that is number one. What is the problem today? Okay, from a leadership perspective. We say something, we think something, we say something, we mean something, we do something, then we say that we've done something. And none of these are in alignment, right? You think something else, but you do something else, you say something else, it's a complete mess. So just imagine if we were to follow just that one shloka and say, look, for God's sake, be authentic. Yeah. Whatever you think, say, do, must be in alignment. If that alignment is there, then you are you. Now, is it, like he says, it doesn't matter howsoever deficient it is. And that's such a great insight, isn't it? Now that brings us to the second aspect of leadership, again from the Gita, okay, which is the part of being resonant as a leader. You see, when you are a leader, not only should you be authentic, but you should have a certain resonance. And if you look at the entire, when he shows his Vishwarupa Darshanam to Arjuna in the 11th chapter, and there, what is he saying? He says, look, this is who I am. And even in 10th chapter, when he says, look, everything is me. I'm everywhere. I'm the sun, I'm the moon, I'm the wind. I'm everywhere is me. And therefore, in terms of a resonant leader, as someone who's leading a team of people, whether it is the corporate world or whether it is the political world, or whether it is the administrative world, or whatever world that you are leading a group of people in, whatever you're saying must resonate across the entire team as being very authentic. So if we do these two things, which are so, intrinsic to the Gita, then you will not have any problem at all as a leader. And it doesn't really matter, whether you're leading a cricket team, or whether you're leading a nation, or whether you're leading a state, or whether you're leading a corporate. These twin things is what I keep telling all leaders who come to me for any coaching, consultancy, etc. I said, this should be the hallmark of the culture of your organization. If this is there, you won the war. Okay? There's nothing else that you require.
One of the important teachings of Vedanta, especially Bhagavad Gita, is about, there are two teachings. One is about the importance of performing karma without a desire for, without a hankering for karma phala. That is one of the most important teachings of karma yoga. Do your karma, but you have a right to do the karma, but not to the fruits of action. And this is especially in a modern context, in a corporate context, to be more specific. We have to people work with a specific goal-oriented approach. I mean, the modern approach to any issue is goal-oriented approach. And previously I have worked for 5 years in construction field. I know how sometimes, the goals set are sometimes kind of impossible goals, and something not attainable, and without resources even more so. But still, the approach is this so-called goal-oriented approach, wherein you're pushed and pulled sometimes in a very disastrous way to approach this. So, how is Gita's teaching about a non-goal-oriented approach, so to speak? I mean, it's not really non-goal-oriented, but more of a non-hankering to the fruits approach with the modern kind of a pushing approach that is there. How Gita can be very useful in this field, in this aspect.
So as a as a management consultant, this is one question that is always asked to me, and this is a favorite question of mine. The first thing, I think the first myth that I'd like to break here is that the Gita never, ever, anywhere says don't be goal-oriented. Never. Okay? This is a myth that has been propagated by a lot of very interesting thinkers from the West, I suspect, to try and make sure that we get into this fatalistic destiny, karma kind of living, and therefore we say no, we are Indians, we should not have goals, we should not at all. Let's step back for a minute, Nithin. Why does he teach the Gita? He says, boss, there is a goal that you have, go fight the war. So if there is no goal in that, then what? Every time he keeps exhorting Arjuna, right? 3-4 times, that even in the end, he says, have you heard me? Will you now go and do what you're supposed to do? If that is not a goal, then what is a goal in life? So first and foremost, this goallessness is not Gita. Let me tell you that up front. Okay. And there are enough and more of passages out there that we can quote ad nauseum. Unfortunately, that 47 chapter 2 has been completely misinterpreted, if you ask. You see, the hidden truth of the Gita is, if you read that particular sloka, is in the last line. It is in the last, it is not in karma. No, that is not. It is in the last line where he says, neither should you be attached to inaction. That is the more important line than the first line. When he says, look, your duty is, people have interpreted it as saying your duty is to the action and not to the fruits of action. Sure, but let me explain that to you. So it is the last line which is more important of that shloka than the first 2 lines. Number one, because very clearly he's saying, you should not be attached to inaction, my friend. That is not what you're supposed to be doing. All right, number one. Number two, let's understand this from a larger perspective. Okay, from this whole business of goal and what you need to be doing. You said construction industry, there is a goal, etc., etc. There is an action that you need to perform right now. That action has an outcome. A series of those outcomes will become a result. Are you with me? You perform an action, that action has to have an outcome. Every action will have an outcome. Am I right? A series of those outcomes will end up becoming a result. Simple. Now, if you're performing this particular action, what is that stanza telling you? 47, and we need to read 47 with 48. Both are equally important. Okay, not just the first two lines of 47. That is not right. You need to read both those paragraphs. Okay, both those stanzas. Now, the important thing is this, that when you're performing that particular action, be completely focused on the outcome of that action. Don't let your mind get deviated by what can happen later. That is what he's telling us. So think about it from those days. Arjuna, when you pick up your bow and when you string your bow with the arrow, you focus on releasing the arrow. That is the outcome that you need to focus on. Make sure that you release the best arrow. Don't worry whether it is Bhishma that side or Drona that side or who is that side. Don't get into that argument. Don't get into that discussion at all. Because if you do, then this action of yours can become inefficient. So let's take it to today's context, Nithin. In the construction business. Whichever business.
Or whatever, all the corporate field.
I'm making a presentation right now. I'm writing a presentation. I'm going to do a PowerPoint, okay, with all my thoughts and whatever, something. If only I'm going to keep thinking what will be the reaction of the guy who's going to see my presentation, or it could be whoever is seeing the presentation, right? It could be God, it could be the Prime Minister of the country, it could be, the biggest corporate honcho of the world, whoever, how does it matter to me? If I'm going to sit down and second guess what is going to be his reaction, will my PowerPoint be efficient? No, because I'm going to try and please him. Are you with me? Right now, I need to capture, see, right now we're doing this interview. I don't know who's going to be watching this interview, right? I don't know what kind of people are watching this interview. Am I going to be concerned? So should I be worried about who is watching this and therefore what will their reaction be? No, I need to now be focused primarily on this action of trying to explain, saying, listen, yaar, let us get the best PowerPoint out, because that is my job right now. If I do this action, so every time I perform an action, there is going to be an outcome. Let me just be focused on that. Let me not worry about what will happen. I may get the business, Nithin. I may not get the business. Okay? And that is what he's saying. Don't get too attached to the fruits and therefore compromise on the action that you're taking. Number one, Nithin. Number two, don't get so attached to the fruits that you don't take action. You say, oh my God, I've got this opportunity to make a presentation to God, and therefore, wow, what if I mess it up? Let me not make the presentation. Nithin, today in the corporate world, the second is the bigger problem than the first. The reason why people are not hitting their targets, you talked about one industry, the reason why people are not hitting those targets, the reason why people are not completing those jobs is because of this. Because they get so, enthralled by what may happen, that the safe thing is not to do. Right? If I don't do it, no, Nithin, then there is no question of a result, no. So I get so attached to that. So this is the problem. So whenever when we teach goal setting, we teach people this. Should you be worried about getting that $1 billion show? Of course you should. No question about it. That's the reason why you're in business, right? So there is $1 billion. But right now, can you focus on getting that $10 million? Can you get that out of the way first, please? And if you can do this 100 times, you will get to $1 billion. Right? That's the whole beauty, Nithin, So I never tire of explaining, saying that whoever gave you this thought that we are goalless, no. Then just imagine, Nithin, for a minute. I mean, just to extend a logic when I talk to corporates. I said, listen, you're talking of Krishna here. He had the Sudarshan Chakra. Right? All that he had to do is one like that. And the Kauravas would go. There's no war. There's no Bhagavad Gita. Right? Matter over. So how can you even think that, that we're talking of goalless? No, you have to have a goal. There is a bigger goal. But that beautiful, those two stanzas are, things that I frame and I send to people saying, please read this properly. Don't use this as an excuse for inaction. Use this as an impetus to take the right action. A little later, Nithin, he talks about the 4 types of action. And the 5th, which is the hidden one. He talks about inaction, reaction, inefficient action, and significant action. And of course, the enduring message of the Gita that I keep telling people is this: significant action without any expectations. If we can move into that stage, then we've got it all.
I think that pretty much sums up significant action without any expectation, rather than inaction under the fear of adverse reaction. So wonderful, wonderful, Ram Kumar ji. I have one. We have almost come to the final conclusion of the session. So I have just one more question. We have been discussing about corporate and leadership and all this. But I want to ask you, apart from your career and everything else, how has Bhagavad Gita influenced you as a person in your individual life, in your day-to-day life as a person? Have you seen a transformation outside of your career? Have you seen a transformation? And if yes, what kind of transformation have you seen? How it inspires you even now?
So let me there is a concept that I use called the rate of retrieval. Okay, it's called the rate of retrieval. This is my own concept. It's called the rate of retrieval. What does it rate of retrieval mean? Let me give you an example of what I'm saying. That supposing there is an unfortunate accident that happens on a road. The job of the police is to ensure that the road is cleared and the road is flowing again. Okay. Of course, the first job is to make sure that if there is any injury, and God forbid there is an injury to someone, then to make sure that that person is cared for. Likewise, I mean, if there is a train that unfortunately derails somewhere, God forbid, then again the job of the railway authorities is to, first job of course is to make sure that you get adequate medical attention and stuff like that. But it is to make sure that the tracks are back in action, right? Because what happens is that there is a huge backlog of trains that need to travel on that train, or there's a huge backlog of passenger traffic on that road that needs to keep moving. Okay. Likewise, if you take man, we have so many things that we need to do in life on a day-to-day basis, right? There are times that you will slip because we're human beings and it is our birthright to slip. It is our birthright to lose our temper. It is our birthright to, to not be there. It is our birthright. We are human beings. We are not machines. We are not programmed to keep doing, this every day. We're not like that. Now, what the Gita teaches us all beautifully is how do you focus on the rate of retrieval? How quickly can you get your life back on track? So if I have lost my temper with you, Nithin, for some reason, and I'm in a bad mood, something went wrong, something went right, something, and I kind of let go. How quickly can I come back to you and say, Nithin, I'm very sorry, Nithin. My apologies. I shouldn't have done that. My sincere apologies, but let's get back to track. That is the rate of retrieval. That is something that the Bhagavad Gita teaches you. There are days when you don't do what you're supposed to be doing. Perfectly all right. You want to watch football? Go ahead. Watch football today, but that's human beings. We're entitled to do that. We're entitled to goof off on one day. We're not a machine. You can't just keep going, like that. And what the Gita teaches us again is this, that look, okay, you've done that, no hassle. Can you come back? So what the Gita has taught me is to focus on the rate of retrieval. That as a human being, I do slip. As a human being, I tend to kind of lose focus. I tend to get into fear. I tend to get into a situation where suddenly I lose my confidence. These are things that happen to everybody, and these are things that happen to me as a human being. And thanks to the Gita and the learnings of the Bhagavad Gita, my rate of retrieval is something that I focus on and saying, let me get back onto what I want to do. Because my task in life is to pursue my swadharma. And my definition of swadharma is very simple: to do what makes me happy while ensuring that there is not one person in the world who's unhappy. To do what makes me happy and making sure that there is nobody in the world who's unhappy. That is my swadharma. So if ever I were to slip from this, then the Bhagavad Gita helps me to come back on track. For that I'm very, very grateful.
It was a very fascinating and beautiful conversation, Ram Kumarji. And on the behalf of entire team of Advaita Academy and all of our audience, I am deeply thankful that you agreed to do this interview. And we have had a lot of insightful discussion about leadership, about goal setting, and about, now you spoke about another concept of retrieval. So I think our all our listeners, uh, they would deeply appreciate this. All of yours will, they find these very short mantras for life. I think these formulas very useful in a very practical way. So thank you for appearing on our show, and we look forward to inviting you again sometime in future.
Thank you so much. I am a great admirer of the Advaita Academy. I look forward to the various programs that you conduct. And I'm very grateful to you, to the team, to Hariji for bringing such a beautiful programs to all of us. God bless you all. Om Tat Sat. Thank you.
Thank you. Viewers, with this, we come to a conclusion of yet another session of Quest. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We have a Facebook discussion page group as well, Advaita Academy discussion group. Join the group as well. And we will be announcing more and more events. So do tune into us. Shri Guru Pyo Namaha.